And so Andrew Tate is back in the news because right now he is facing 30 more days in extension on his house arrest from the Romanian authorities, but also that people are claiming that his interview with Tucker Carlson is the most watched interview in history with 80 million views.
Now, no, it's actually higher than that. It's in the 90 million views range on Twitter. But
it was 80 in the chart that I saw.
I looked at it today, and it's like approaching 100 million views on Twitter.
Of course, this is not network television, which is where
it's not the same thing
as
even getting a view on YouTube.
Yeah.
I've said this, Twitter is kind of inflating the numbers on its engagement because a view is not the same thing as engagement.
Yeah.
It takes a lot more to get a view on YouTube than it does on Twitter. On Twitter, if you scroll past something, it automatically adds a view. It doesn't mean that you clicked on it. It doesn't mean that you actually watched the media that's attached to it. And only the person who posted the video can see the actual engagement numbers on it, the analytics. So even when you count things other than impressions, if you look at who clicked on the video and watched it, it still is inflated from there because you only need to click on the video and stay on it for like 1 second to count that as engagement. So it does seem like they're kind of inflating the numbers, and I don't think that many people have actually watched the interview.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2.5 hours long. I don't think people's attention span is even long enough to stay there. I watched the whole thing, granted, but it was for the show.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have watched the whole thing on my own. And most of it was, you know, fairly boilerplate takes on society and Tucker asking him his opinions about feminism and porn and things like this. Not as interesting as the part where they were actually talking about the details of his detainment and his arrest and the charges that he's facing in Romania. And I think it's kind of lame when people are saying, like, you know, it's unjust that his house arrest is getting extended or that he was detained without charges, because you chose to live in a country where people aren't precious about their civil liberties and they don't have values like that. I mean, even in the US, this happens to people, but it's far more likely to happen to you in a corrupt country like Romania. And there's plenty of video examples where Andrew Tate says, like, I went to Romania so that I have license to do whatever the F I want.
Also, a lot of those views, I mean, Tucker's also just a very popular, like, Tucker Carlson is
Tucker
like,
brought in a lot of that attention.
Like, all his videos since he started Tucker on Twitter have done extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of it as well. And then I noticed that people were waxing poetic about Andrew Tate on Twitter, and I just wondered if the tide was changing. You know, the tide was turning on the general perception of him from people that are not already on the left, right?
It seems like since the charges came forward from the Romanian prosecutors, Andrew Tate's kind of been on a reputation rebranding tour.
Yeah.
Where he's trying to become more palatable to conservatives. But I don't think he actually shares that many of our values. I mean, just today or yesterday, he tweeted something like, I can't wait for the Islamization of the UK. Yeah. And he's celebrating one of their historic buildings being turned into a mosque. And I don't think that's something that most right-wing people would agree with. Yeah. And if anything, like, the Islamic world has a lot of degeneracy too. It's just not, you know, promoted by the media there, but it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Conservatives are, like, I think they're more divided on where they stand on Andrew Tate now.
Well, I had Sydney Watson posted a video from Milk Bar TV that had something that I think you're right. We can't even show.
Yeah.
On here.
So Sydney Watson, if you're interested, go to her page and watch this video. It's like 6 minutes long. Some of it are clips that we've already showed on the show before. But some of it I hadn't seen before. One of them was a video of him literally beating one of his concubines. I don't know what else to call her. One of the women who worked for him.
Yep. And
his defense for this video was like, you know, if you're a G, then you know that she actually liked that. It's not looking good for him. And I think that, you know, to view him as some kind of like avatar for the conservative movement or people with traditional values is very misguided. That's all, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and between this, it seems like people have moved on, and now Pearl is the new topic of discussion for a lot of these people.
And it's weird because she's a lot less interesting than Andrew Tate.
But I think it's like now it's more, it's safer to have an opinion to the contrary. Right? Like you can just go back and forth and debate about whether she's kind of loony. She comes off kind of loony. Like when you listen to her talk, she doesn't come off as the most coherent. Like I know that she makes some points that people really, really like, but people have been pushing back against her on Twitter a lot lately. And, I don't engage, but I always look at the people that I follow that, respond to her, and a lot of them have had a lot to say to her. And it seems like that's where the debate is going. It's going away from Andrew Tate and towards her.
Most of what she's been talking about recently is that, cheating and like if you want a high value man, then, you should expect him to be unfaithful in your marriage, which again, not a conservative value, and it's not a Christian value. And this is what I said on the show before. Red Pill is about talking about the way society is and how to excel in society the way that it is. And the Christian worldview is anything but that. It's it's literally that, existing as a Christian, the world will hate you because you're going against the grain. Red Pill is about, like, this is the way things are, and this is how you succeed the way things are. And if you want to actually change the paradigm, that's not the ideology for you. It's how to succeed in the current paradigm of feminism and sexual degeneracy and, degrading relations between the sexes. But it's not about actually repairing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's just sowing more division. Honestly, it seems like a weapon for the demonic.
To me, it's just monetization. A lot of these things, they're not conversations that are being had in private. They're conversations that are being had on monetizable platforms in which you can grow an audience in a way that's extremely beneficial for your brand. But when it comes to the sexes, it's very, very divisive. And I always make the point, I'm like, look, a lot of the things that we see that are happening here, the arguments that people have online, they come from conversations that used to be had in private with people of the same gender as you. So when girls would complain about guys, they would complain about guys over a glass of wine with their girlfriends, and the girls, even if they didn't agree, would say, yes, you go, queen. Girl, whatever. And bros would go out and, you go do things with your friends.
Talk.
Yeah, locker room talk.
Blah,
and
blah, blah.
It was kept there. Now these are being turned into skits and TED Talks and various sound bites that are then left open to a comment section, which become inherently divisive because everyone's got their 2 cents to be putting in.
It's so like oppression Olympics to ask constantly who has it harder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like if everyone wants to be the victim, I don't want to be a part of that conversation. Yep. And also the ultimate refutation of the things that Pearl is saying is that the women who actually lived the values that she preaches, meaning that they saved themselves for marriage, they got married, they became mothers and had a family with a man who they're actually attracted to, who's competent and what they consider high value, they disagree with her. And if they have, higher standards, then they're perfectly entitled to have those. I think that's like ultimately what makes a fool out of Pearl, is that she's not living what she preaches.
Yeah. And it's harder for people to buy into something if you can't actually show evidence that you stand by your values in a real world way.
Yeah. I don't think Andrew Tate lives his values either.
Yeah.
He's talking about all of these like traditional values and family and marriage and stuff like this and promoting it to people. But at the same time, he has like multiple baby mamas and hasn't married any of them and isn't a Christian despite wanting to garner support from a Christian audience.
There's a $20 super chat there from Disco Jensen with no message, but thank you, my friend.
Thank
At least,
you.
or is there a message on there? Maybe I
don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you, my friend. Do you think is there anybody that you would say that is promoting good values that you think people should watch if
they're not as popular?
Yeah, but no, that's what I'm saying.
Lila Rose is one of them.
Okay, tell everyone who Lila Rose is.
She went on whatever a few times, like several times recently, and she received pushback from the Red Pill crowd because she's married, she's a Christian, she's a mom, and she's pro-life. And she's actually like calling people to live by a higher standard than just, you know, competing in a sexual marketplace. And it's scarier to tell people like, you know, you're better than OnlyFans, and you're also like better than playing the sexual marketplace and like being a player, being a pickup artist and stuff like this. This is all below our dignity.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get popular saying that. You're not going to get popular off promoting that message because it's actually uplifting and not divisive. You get more views by dividing people.
Yep. Do you think that we fall into that category, given that like the stuff we talk about?
What do you mean?
Is what we talk about inherently divisive?
Like in pop culture?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
It's I wonder about that sometimes.
I think our content is actually like fairly palatable and innocuous.
It's just something that I always wonder about, because you know, like you'll get people that push back sometimes, and look, there are people that like go out there and like what Disney's putting out. There are actually that exists. You just said the other day, you said Elemental ended up making $300 million, right? So some of these things are enjoyed by other people. I just worry sometimes because I do believe that in a lot of ways you are and you become what your brain focuses on. So if you focus heavily on negativity, if you focus heavily on inherently divisive things, a lot of what ends up getting covered on these shows, granted it's a variety show, it ends up affecting your mental health. It ends up affecting your worldview. So
says Disney's Elemental has grossed $311.6 million to date against its $200 million budget. So if $200 million were its budget and then you factor in marketing, it hasn't actually made that much money.
It hasn't made any money.
But compared to its opening weekend, like we thought it was going to be overall a loss.
Well, you said it had a $300 million budget?
No, it had $200 million budget, and it's made $300 million.
So it's $275 million. Yeah, it'll make maybe the tiniest bit of profit. Yeah, yep.
But yeah,
yep. So yeah,
I don't think that we peddle in like dividing people, if that's what you're asking.
I mean, the goal isn't to do that, right? Like, my views are my views. In the chat, I just read somebody says, Snoopy says, yeah, considering you lied to push an agenda, that's divisive. I don't know what we're lying about, but I don't know if I buy that. But I do wonder sometimes. I do wonder sometimes if, like, look, you're still making content that's going to make people see other people are going to see it differently than you, right? So it's still controversial in a lot of ways. It's just something to think about, to at least keep in the mind, like, look, you are a lot of times what you focus on. So
yeah.
All right. So Lila, what was her name? Lila
Rose.
Is there anybody else? Somebody said Michael Knowles.
I mean, I like Sovereign Bra for what it's worth, but he's not exactly an influencer.
Yeah.
Who else did you?
Somebody said Michael Knowles, and they said
a lot of the Daily Wire
Jordan
hosts
Peterson.
are people that I would consider like living their values.
Yeah.
They're actually like, they have families, they have like positive things to say about what it's like to actually live that out. And a lot of these influencers who, admittedly, they have more time on their hands to spew all of this garbage because they don't have responsibilities to their families or spouses. They're not creating any constructive conversations.
Jordan Peterson does good work too.
Yeah, it's just talking about,
he's wild on Twitter, though.
Who has it harder, men or women?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as when the liberal activists say who has it harder, white people or POC. Like, that's not creating any constructive conversations. That's just dividing people.
Jordan Peterson in general, though, does good work too. Like, I think that he has a lot of discussions that are,
because that message of personal responsibility and that kind of like fatherly message to young men resonated with them.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't think of Andrew Tate in the same category.
No, not at all. No, and
even though he's kind of he's getting the same audience of young men, it's with a message that is telling them that, you know, personal responsibility is about gaining as much wealth as possible to become high value, but then not using it to do anything that is generative in society.
And that actually reminds me, because did you read what Carl Benjamin, what Sargon said about Andrew Tate?
What did he say?
Okay, so here, I'll put it on screen here. Says, on one hand, Tate is assessing the debauchery of the modern era and leveraging it so that he can become as satisfied with materialism as it is possible to be. The watchword of our era is promiscuity, and so he has used the materials at his hand to his own advantage. He hasn't innovated, just exploited that which already exists. Feminism lifted the burden of the restraint off men and women, so he is just filling the vacuum left behind. He represents the bellicose aspect of the lunar civilization, and he has no reason to challenge or reject it because it has served him so handsomely. He reinforces the system with his lifestyle and success.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Wholeheartedly.
I thought I read that, and I thought that was a very interesting take on it.
I'm not calling Andrew Tate the Antichrist here, to be clear, but what you'll know about the Antichrist is that he will accurately assess and diagnose the problems in society and then sell you a solution that is actually destructive.
Yeah.
And that's what I see a lot of these influencers doing, Andrew Tate included, but a lot of them.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.